All right, I'm calling this meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, January 18th. This is the regularly scheduled hybrid town council meeting. First item is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next item is roll call.
Counselor Seither,
Here.
Counselor Calucci,
Here.
Counselor Shoup,
Here.
Counselor Katerina,
Here.
Counselor Hamel, Counselor McGee,
Here.
and Chairman Anderson.
Here. All right, next item is order number 23-004. Act on the request for an executive session pursuant to Title 1 405.6 regarding the town manager's performance evaluation. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Second?
All those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. We will be returning at 7 o'clock.
And we'll try to do pictures right before the 7 o'clock show.
I'm gonna call this meeting back to order. So we're picking up our agenda where we left off. Next item is item 4, general public comment. So this is for anybody in the public, either in the room or on the online, who would like to make a comment about something that is not on the agenda. And if you could please state your name and address.
Hi, my name is Nina McKee and I live at 309 Black Point Road. And I'm just here, I just wanted to pop in to say how incredible this council is. And I've been to quite a few meetings and I can't believe you're awesome. The way you spend all the time and all the committees you're on and you do this for this town. And there are very few people who pop in, you know, unless there's a real crisis. And so I just wanted to really thank you so much. And one thing that I think is remarkable is that there have been some pretty heady things like the Downs or the Comfort Inn or the library. And whenever there's any dissension, everybody's civil. And that is wonderful. And so I just really wanted to thank you. And I also wanted to say how wonderful it is to have the Council's Corner in the leader. That means an awful lot. And I think that there should be more publicity to get more residents involved, especially because there are so many new people. And I was thinking that the town of Scarborough newsletter, if there was some way for when people come to the town, whether it's through taxes or whatever, that there could be some information given out that they could get on the internet and get that letter, because that is really key. And I think it's fabulous and not too many people know about it. Now, it's interesting to see John at the gavel. And I think it's wonderful. And John, you did a great job. And I'm sure you miss not having the gavel. But thank you so much. Really, thank you, everyone. It's just incredible, really. So thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other public comment for items not on the agenda? Don't see anybody in the room or online. So moving on to item number 5, minutes from our January 4th, 2023 Town Council meeting. Any discussion? Or can I get a motion?
Second?
Any discussion? No? All those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Item number 6 is adjustments to the agenda. I do not have any adjustments to recommend. Is there any adjustments to the agenda? Seeing no. Item 7 is items to be signed treasurer warrants. I signed those during our break. Item number 8 is the town manager report. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few quick points of interest, perhaps. Staff is fully involved in budget development phase. We will be digesting council goals. Finance Committee had good conversation around financial goals as well, specifically for budget. So we'll certainly be taking those into consideration and distributing those to staff with guidance. As was mentioned at some length at the Finance Committee level, we do anticipate this year will be defined by inflation. We're not immune by any stretch. We just think back to our own household budgets. We're certainly affected by all those same sort of pressures. So we expect that will cause upward pressure on wages, certainly all the petroleum-based products, pretty much everything. So that really is going to be a defining characteristic and some headwinds, frankly. But we're going into this with eyes wide open and doing our very best to manage within those challenges. We did share kind of a tentative budget schedule with Finance Committee, and we'll start very soon be able to really pinpoint those critical dates, and we'll share that out widely, including with the public. So we're well underway in that regard. I want to report on the assistant town clerk. As the council and the public may recall, Tony Justice has come over and is kind of doing double duty, still holds the title of town clerk, but also assisting me in my office. And the goal, long-term goal, is really to create a succession plan for when Tony ultimately either wants to give up that title of town clerk or perhaps retire at some point. Certainly no pressure, but we really want to make sure we're ready for that day. I think we can all appreciate it behind the desk here. how critical the town clerk position is and really what a tremendous job Tony does. So we have the luxury of time and a little bit of and want to use that opportunity to really prepare ourselves in this organization for that transition. We have been successful in selecting whom we believe is an excellent candidate. I'll withhold the details. She's still going through some notifications to her employer. And there's some, I'll say, extenuating circumstances with her employer, and we want to respect that. So we've got the luxury of a little time, but we have a start date of February 21st. So we'll be pleased to share some of those details as that date gets closer. With respect to the Comfort Inn, I just want to provide a quick update. At this point, all guests currently residing there have received their official, been served their official notices. The final hearings are scheduled for February 2nd. And I've been advised as of today that all guests' rooms will be vacated or guests removed by February 17th, barring any delay and upset through the court systems. I can say that calls for service are dramatically down, not surprisingly, as the numbers diminish. You know, that we see a reciprocal decrease in calls for service, which is certainly welcomed. We'll continue to monitor the situation. I should mention in passing, we've mentioned, I think, last month that there was the potential for injunctive relief sought on behalf of some of the guests. None of that materialized. However, there have been 3 human rights complaints filed on behalf of guests that we are working through with our insurer and have very good legal counsel on board for those matters. I'll keep you apprised as we move forward. And lastly, we wanted to update you on a new program. It's called Keeping Cumberland County Warm. This is a program spearheaded by Cumberland County itself using ARPA funds. I believe a total of $1.35 million has been allocated toward this program countywide. And it's designed to really address folks that are outside of the traditional heating assistance programs, the LIHEAP program, and also general assistance. And Liam has been more involved than I, and perhaps he can provide a little more detail in that regard.
Yeah, I believe there was some press herald, I think an article in the paper this week. We received some calls from residents. The details, the specific details on eligibility will be forthcoming. We will do some positive PR using our channels when the program's up and running. We're just trying to determine at this point how we're going to administer it. You know, it's obviously a great program. We want to make it available to residents, but how to handle applications for the allocation of $50,000 is not something that we have easy staffing to do. So we've engaged or going to engage Project Grace to see if there's an opportunity to partner with them, as they're already kind of in the heating assistance business. So that'll be subject to their availability, interest, and the county's approval. So again, expect some update before the end of the week, and we'll communicate out on social media channels.
Yeah, just the final point on eligibility. What's really unique about this program is again, the target audience are those folks that are above the income thresholds for general assistance or the LIHEAP program, but below 300% of the federal poverty guidelines. So that's kind of the broad parameters. We'll have more specifics as the program gets rolled out. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm available for questions.
Are there any questions for Tom? No? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Okay, moving on to the next item. Next item is order number 23-005, a 7:00 PM public hearing and action on the following new request for a marijuana license. Alpine Cannabis Company, LLC, located at 15 Holly Street, Unit 205B, for a medical marijuana products manufacturing facility. Liam, would you like to set this one up?
Sure. I think trying to recall last time we went through a similar procedure here. Just briefly, this is a request for a new license. It's for a medical manufacturing license. The recommendation from staff this evening is to table this item simply because the applicant's not ready to move into operation. They have not met the requirements of the town ordinance. Getting ahead of perhaps some of the public comments and the comments the council has received. And certainly in our experience working through the licensing process with marijuana establishments, the overarching concern historically has been odor. I can reassure the council that I do not believe there will be any odor associated with this operation. It's a manufacturing essentially edibles and other medicinal products. It uses a concentrate that is odorless, essentially. So to the degree that's a present concern of the public, I think when they are ready to be up and running and when the license comes back to you for approval, I can pretty confidently say that that should not be an issue. But again, without going any longer, I would request that we table this item for the time being.
Okay. Are there any questions from the council for Liam? No. All right, is there anybody in the public who would like to speak to this item? All right, if you come to the podium, if you could just share your name and your address for the record, please.
My name's Brianna Floyd and I reside at 6 Holly Street. And I've dealt with Liam in the past. He actually was really helpful with the snow canning issue. I know this is a completely separate issue, but in the past, there was a lot of odor. There still remains a lot of odor, regardless of what the town has done. I know you guys have been working really hard, but my husband's very active on the site. We use the app. We've kind of given up on it because there's really not much that has changed. So we're worried that in the future, adding more of this actually on our street, we have 10 children on our road with 4 houses, ranging like in the ages of 4 to 14. So it's really a big concern bringing this into a residential area. I know it's zoned commercially too on one side of the road, but we're just worried for the future of these kids. And I know the odor is probably not going to be an issue immediately. I did speak with the owner of the building, Burnham, and he's wonderful. He's really good to deal with. But I just worry about the town and the future and what's going to happen if we keep approving more and more. The odor is going to continue. What happens if retail opens up in Scarborough? We don't want any of these sales. We don't want more traffic on our street, people driving. I don't want to say under the influence, but if people are coming to a facility like this and we have a really small road, it's just really hurting the nice town that we live in, and it's a concern. So I would love it if you guys could consider that before voting on it. Thank you.
Thank you. So we did receive a couple of items where people asked us to read their testimony into the record. So I'm going to read a couple of the emails that we received. So the first one says, "Good evening, Mr. Chairman and councilors. My name is David Rabideau, and I reside with my wife, Darlene, at 10 Bickford Street in Scarborough. I am here this evening to oppose order number 23-005, a request for Alpine Cannabis Company located at 15 Holly Street, Unit 205B, to establish a new marijuana product manufacturing facility. We were notified of this request as abutters within 500 feet of the 15 Holly Street property. The southwest corner of our property abuts the northeast corner of 15 Holly Street. Ordinance 1018 suggests our section 10.2 of the marijuana establishing licensing ordinance states that the marijuana establishments shall only be located within the zoning districts permitted in the Scarborough zoning ordinance. The approved marijuana cultivation areas map on the town website show that the cultivation area in the Pine Point neighborhood is entirely located south of the rail tracks. Holly Street is north of the rail tracks. In addition to the official ordinance facts, I want to point out that Bickford Street and Holly Street neighborhood is a small, long-established good neighborhood. Our good neighborhood with families and children who enjoy our beautiful seaside location. We spend enormous amounts of time outdoors together where our children and grandchildren play, very much like in times past. The odor situation at the existing cultivation site on Snow Canning Road has demonstrated that no matter the mitigation method, the odor cannot be contained within their property. I commonly use the Scarborough odor compliant application to report offending odor, and the situation has not improved. If you were to stand on Pine Point Road outside of the facility, you would be very aware of the industry within its walls. The air is saturated with the odor of cannabis. I'm concerned for our well-being and quality of life. I'm concerned for our children. Who wants to explain this to them? I'm concerned with our property values. I plead with the council to not repeat the situation in our immediate neighborhood. Thank you for your time. The next one, dear council members, my wife and I live as homestead owners at 12 Bickford Street, Scarborough 04074. We purchased our home in 2004, and in 2012, I retired to this property and our butters to the business park at the end of Holly Street, where a cannabis growth facility is currently proposed. In 2018, we substantially invested to improve our property, upgrading our space to our ideal for spending the rest of our life. Our son and his family, including my grandchild, live catty corner to the property on Holly Street. There are also abutters to the business park. Greta and I just celebrated our 80th birthdays and are opposed to the proposed cannabis facility in the business park. We base our opposition on evidence that needs understanding by the town council, and I request that our reasoning be read into the record of your meeting in the issue Wednesday night at 7 p.m. January 18th. First, we have experienced the cannabis odor that emanates from the cannabis growth facility south of the railroad tracks on Route 9, Pine Point Road. The odor periodically pervades the Holly Street neighborhood, and we have had direct experience of its smells when putting our granddaughter on the school bus in the past years. We are not opposed to others using cannabis, but have avoided using it ourselves, and the smell of it has distinctive negative connotations in our minds, and thus we claim a right to protest any forced experience of that odor on us, particularly on our homestead retirement property at 12 Bickford Street. Second, the Holly Street Business Park is of wood construction and it is inappropriate for a plant growth facility. Attached links to expert opinion on that topic suggest that a growth facility requires expensive equipment for air control and moisture control that are inconsistent with the wooden structure of the business park. Many states do not regulate the degree of care needed to handle the air and moisture of a plant growth facility. If Maine and the town of Scarborough do not adequately control those aspects of cannabis growth, I protest the lack of oversight. Third, I was apprised by another abutter that the business park is not part of the map of areas allowed to grow cannabis. There are underlying reasons for this. We had a recent problem with the business park hosting a company that required too much electrical energy to carry out their production, Casco Bay Creamery, which required a loud generator and a compressor housed outside and causing excessive neighborhood noise for 1.5 years before it was stopped. The town should be forewarned that the plant growth facility requires substantial equipment to provide high intensity light for the growth, humidity control for plant growth, air circulation control, and expensive equipment and air filters to run while not emitting odor to the neighborhood. The business park, unless it had its utilities improved in the last few years, does not have the utilities to provide an adequate cannabis facility.
I'm sorry, the name.
The name is Joseph and Gerda Kunkel, 12 Bickford Street. Next is from Brian and Zach Boda. Do you want to have the address? Oh, sorry, Bree and Zach Boda, sorry. Reading these is like hurting my eyes. Dear Mr. Chairman and councilors, my name is Bree Boda, and I, along with my husband, Zach, our 2 children, and Chocolate Lab, live all happily at 8 Holly Street in Scarborough. My husband and I recently received a letter from the town notifying us of the applicant, Alpine Cannabis, requesting a license for an adult medical marijuana products manufacturing facility at 15 Holly Street. Our home is the closest residence to the address of 15 Holly, and it is important to us that we share with you why we strongly oppose 23-005's request. Holly Street is relatively small and may only have a handful of homes, but combined house a minimum of 10 young children, all of whom attend Scarborough Public Schools. On a single day, a bus stops at the top of our road 6 different times. The residents on Holly Street, as well as on Bickford Street, are our friends. We enjoy spending time with one another and often do so outdoors. We have already had to express our concerns regarding the existing abundance of pungent odor that comes from the multiple marijuana facilities just to our south. We, along with our neighbors, are also considered abutters to all the marijuana facilities existing on Snow Canning Road and cannot imagine what yet another facility will do in preventing us from breathing in the clean ocean air or simply fresh air. We are proud of where we live, and we share it often with our families and friends, and quite frankly are tired of explaining to them what it is they are smelling. It makes us sad when we have to explain to our children why an area so beautiful smells so bad. We worry about the increase in traffic and its drivers, as our children and our animals are often seen running from house to house. We also worry about the negative impact it may have on the value of our homes and homes in the surrounding area. We are asking that you please put yourselves in our shoes and think about whether or not you would want an adult marijuana facility as your neighbor. Does Scarborough need to further expand its currently approved marijuana cultivation zone to envelop an entire residential street? Thank you for your time. And the last one is from Heidi White at 14 Bickford Street. My name is Heidi White, and together with my husband and children live at 14 Bickford Street, Scarborough. We are, did I already read this? No, we are the closest physical abutters to the business park at 15 Holly Street. My bedroom window is close to 100 feet away from the building. We oppose the approval for an adult medical marijuana products and manufacturing facility at 15 Holly Street, Unit 205B. Our prior experience with manufacturing facilities in the business park have been negative. It has been questionable whether the electricity supports the manufacturing process and have at times required additional generators and created noise and diesel exhaust smell that came in our windows and disrupted our comfort and well-being in our home. We are also concerned with the times that this manufacturing establishment will be operational and hope that it does not add to loitering in the parking lot or around the building, which disturbs our quiet neighborhood. We have already filed complaints using the online record of order form, the current grow facility on Pine Point Road on the other side of the railroad tracks from us, and the odor seems to continue. We can only imagine that if there was any drying exhaust involved in the manufacturing process, that the odor from a building less than 100 feet away from us will cause an odor that will affect our comfort and ability to open the windows in our home. An odor that a residential neighborhood should not have to endure. I also have concerns that the building is not designed for the air filters that will be required to mitigate any odor through the marijuana manufacturing process. Proven by the necessity for additional temporary generators that shook our house and monopolized any sounds of nature in our neighborhood when the butter manufacturing company was a tenant between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. Monday through Thursday, between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. Friday through Saturday, and between 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. on Sunday, and often we're in violation of those hours. Although we are well aware that we share property lines with the business park and made that choice when we purchased our home, the current tenants are very quiet and only present during business hours. Please consider, would you want a marijuana manufacturing establishment within 100 feet of your home before you approve this permit? One thing, Liam, I would like you to clarify, because I think there were a couple of comments in there about this not being zoned for marijuana. Can you just talk a little bit about the overlay?
Yeah, happy to. So for a long time, again, I've been kind of in this role overseeing this program for a little over 2 years now, and we had been approached periodically about whether this facility was within the overlay district that also includes Snow Canning Road. It was the planning department's opinion and knowledge that it was not. They received a further inquiry this fall, and they went back and looked through their records and actually found it was an error that it was omitted from the overlay. And so they corrected that error. And so, yes, it is. It was the long believed to be not included in the overlay zone, but it is in fact included.
Okay.
So this would be a permissible use. So I think that answers that question. Sure.
Yep.
Just to clarify, the difference being the language the council passed back in, Tony, forgive me, 2012 or 13.
16.
I beg your pardon, is very clear in that regard. The zoning map did not extend to include this area in particular. That is where the confusion lies.
Just to speak to one other piece, we had published a map on our kind of marijuana page, if you will, that highlighted those areas. Since we discovered the error in zoning, we have not updated that map. And so I've already put in a request to staff to update that map so it does include the Holly Street property.
Okay. All right. Is there any other members of the public who would like to comment? All right, if you can come up to the podium and please state your name and address.
Sure. My name's Dave Rabideau. I live at 10 Bickford Street in Scarborough. First question is regarding Mr. Gallagher's comment about it being a manufacturing facility and not a growing facility, therefore no smell. But that doesn't stop anybody else from coming in and cultivating, correct?
That's correct. With regard to this establishment and what we are aware of for the type of operation it's going to be, I don't believe odor will be a prevailing concern. It does not prohibit, though, a cultivation facility on this site.
Okay. And secondly, regarding the cultivation map that is in the marijuana section and the fact that it hasn't been updated. I mean, maybe that's a rhetorical question, but what's a citizen to do? This is the information we have available to us. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, sir.
I'm Joe Kunkel from 12 Bickford Street, and I had a statement read in. one of the points of that I don't think has been satisfied in my mind was the fact that the business park is a wooden structure and is totally inappropriate for a growth facility, which requires high humidity, intense lighting, and very substantial air control, all which require more electricity than a business establishment, which the business park is. I grow animals. I grew plants. I know the effects of humidity on a wooden structure. It'll rot the structure out in a matter of years unless there's huge investment in insulating the wooden. All of you who have grown things in your house, if you're misting them, and this is in the middle of the winter, that moisture goes to the coldest spot, which is your roof. And in an earlier residence we had, it rotted out our roof just to have a plant growth area that had to be misted and wasn't controlled in terms of the humidity. And I just object to a growth facility ever being established there.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Darlene Smith, 10 Bickford Street. I'm married to Dave Rabideau. I would like to know, as concerned citizens of Bickford and Holly Street, do we have any recourse to ask the planning board to please keep the zone as it was? When this started 2 years ago, when we were asked to do a roundtable with Liam to talk about the growth and to talk with some of the actual growers, which was really valuable. They acted as if they were as concerned as we were about mitigating the odor. That hasn't proven the case. The town has bent over backwards to accommodate this business in our community, yet it seems like things are still status quo. We were told in 2018 that the reason that they were even being licensed and we had to deal with the issue were they were grandfathered. This new business is not grandfathered. This is a brand new business, a brand new establishment that was not previously, until it came to light, zoned for this situation. And we would like to execute that. We would prefer it to stay that way. It's one thing that when we're walking to the beach on Pine Point Road, that's all you can smell. I mean, it's awful for our tourists that come to our town. It's awful for people that live in the town, that the town has had to bend over backwards to accommodate businesses in a place where it really shouldn't be. Mr. Burnham has always been a very good butter and neighbor. I'm disappointed to hear that he would lose some of his fabulous businesses that he now rents to. Once I'm not sure as a butters if the tenants, other tenants would have even been notified. So that's disappointing to me to find out that this is how we hear about these things, is through a letter. And obviously from the amount of interest, we would like to not hear that it's too late, Bickford Street, it's too late, Holly Street. We've already made this decision. We'd like it to go back to be tabled and the planning board to keep, at the very least, keep those grandfathered zones as they were, like we were told they were, and not add new to the zone. Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the public who would like to comment?
John, we had one more come in over email
Oh, we did.
just now.
Okay. But if we have someone in the room, I will prepare that to read.
Barbara Kavanaugh, and I'm at 8 Bickford Street, and I just want to, confirm what my neighbors are saying. And definitely you smell the marijuana. And, we all garden and we're all outside. And we've been there for 4 years, and first I had to ask, what is that smell? So, and, it's such a nice neighborhood, nice, good people, lots of kids. So, I think medical marijuana is wonderful for many things, but please don't put it in our neighborhood. That's it.
Thank you. All right, and the one that came in just now is from Kim Kunkel at 7 Holly Street. Good evening, Chairman and Councilors. My name is Kim Kunkel. I reside at 7 Holly Street with my husband, Peter, and our minor daughter. I am responding in opposition of Order 23-005 to establish a new marijuana growing and/or distribution facility by Alpine Cannabis Company at 15 Holly Street. Our property abuts the property proposed in the ordinance on the north side of the railroad tracks. Ordinance 1018, section 10.2 of the marijuana establishing licensing ordinance indicates marijuana establishing license ordinance shall only be located within the zoning districts permitted in the Scarborough zoning ordinance. The map on the town website shows the approved marijuana cultivation area in the neighborhood of Pine Point is entirely located south of the railroad tracks. The proposed location is not within the approved area. Aside from these facts, I have lived in the neighborhood for 23 years, initially on Bickford Street and now on Holly Street. This is a family neighborhood to include children through retirees. We are out and about in the neighborhood during the year. Having to tolerate the stench from the approved area south of the tracks, I am firmly opposed to anything similar on this side of the tracks as a direct neighbor, resulting in additional stench and additional traffic in our short dead-end street. I should use the odor compliant reporting as my neighbors do, but I find it cumbersome and my attention is focused on attending to my family as I am in the sandwich generation. The quality of life has diminished with the current growers on Snow Canning Road. The quality of life of the current families in the neighborhood in addition to property values. For the sake of the citizens and taxpayers aforementioned, please consider everyone's quality of life and coming to a decision. Respectfully, Kim Kunkel. All right, anybody else out in the audience who would like to comment on this?
Richard Hayes, Martin Avenue. I don't have a dog in the fight. I don't live close to the facility, but I'd like to speak in support of these people that you consider their requests and cancel this. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else in the public who would like to speak to this item or anybody online? No? All right. So with that, can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
A discussion? Counselor Hamel?
Yeah, I'm sensitive to the feedback we've heard from the residents. It's come fast and furious, and thankfully we are taking the time to table this. It's interesting to me to learn that we made changes to zoning maps, looking at a map in 2016, and this was before we had even adopted any of the marijuana ordinances for the town of Scarborough. So, it's one thing to look at a map, it's another thing to think through things. And then this development of the overlay zone that moved from the light industrial area, which is right around Snow Canning, the old Snow Canning facility, and it moved to include, the overlay moved to include the marijuana manufacturing facilities right on the railroad siding there on the south side of the tracks. And now it moved across the street to what is clearly in large part a residential street. So I know this area pretty well because of some Clamor friends of mine keep boats down near the Holly Street building where this marijuana manufacturing facility is supposed to be going in. And I remember when Councilor Katarina and I were working on helping to adopt the marijuana ordinances, we were pretty clear about trying to restrict cultivation and manufacturing to industrial areas. But it does seem to me there needs to be a process to revisit those things and perhaps reverse overlay districts where you have a large concentration of residents. So, I would hope that in the same spirit that we tabled this, because the initial opposition, that we would take more time to study this. I live in Pine Point. This is my neighborhood too. I drive the Pine Point Road every day. In the summer, one of the great joys in life, one of the simple pleasures, is driving over that bridge and coming into Pine Point and smelling the sea air
prefer to smell the sea air and not to smell the ganja. Okay, this applies to residents. It applies to people who are visiting our beaches. They're all accessible that way. So I think it's time for us to take a broader view of this and try to really learn what happened with the creation and the expansion of the overlay zone and this entire area that we're talking about, this Holly Street area. Thank you.
Counselor Clucci?
Yeah, by and large, I agree with Counselor Hamel. I was reading this, so I don't think anybody changed the map. When you read the industrial overlay, it's worded with some choice words. All right, I'll read a little bit. The provisions of the IO district are applicable only to buildings existing as of the date of adoption of this provision that are occupied or intended to be occupied predominantly by uses that are not allowed as permitted uses or special exemptions. This is now a TV4 zone. So it's an overlay on top of a TV4. And it was interpreted one way before, now it's being interpreted a little differently. We can clarify this. I think we should. I think we should be demarking at the minimum the railroad tracks, because this is a residential neighborhood. And I know somebody asked, what's your recourse? This is it. You come alert us to an issue and we can take action to fix it if we want to. And I would like to, after we table it. But it's kind of a separate matter. It's not on this particular, taking action on this license, but we can prevent grow facilities from happening in this neighborhood anyways. That's within our control.
Any other, Counselor Katarina?
Yeah, upon tabling motion, for how long should this be tabled? What would be the recommendation on looking around?
The current recommendation is until the final inspection has been conducted by the codes office and they have been issued an occupancy permit. So no specific.
So
date.
no specific date, because I'm like, what? What? This needs to be fixed somehow or other, so I want to make sure we have enough time to make sure we've done a full investigation as to what the intent was.
Mhm.
The legislative intent, so to speak, of this matter, before we do anything further with this, so.
Mhm. Counselor Scyther?
Along those same lines, will notifications be sent out to the abutters again when this topic, when this topic comes up? My concern would just be because this was the public hearing. And so I just want to make sure that we don't find ourselves in a loophole where we don't technically have to notify abutters when this becomes final action. But I just want to make sure that everybody knows what we know and when we're going to be discussing this again.
We can make sure that happens.
Thank you, Tony.
Counselor McGee?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the feedback from the public on this. I agree with what's been set up here. I think it's worth a review. I don't think any one of us wants to have a cultivation facility in our backyard. And it sounds like that's where this is kind of headed. So definitely worth it tabling and definitely worth a review.
Counselor Hamel, is there anything else you wanted to add?
Yeah, I was just to get specific here. I know we're going to table it for enough time to study it, but I would suggest that it be potentially a topic for the ordinance committee to look at. It seems like they would be, it might be very helpful to get their input on it rather than us trying to decide on our own as a council. I think that would make for a better, more fully informed decision.
I'm quite confident staff can prepare a complete history and overview of kind of how we got here, if you will. And if the ordinance committee is the best venue to bring that, we're pleased to do that.
So would anybody like to offer a motion to table this until this has gone through ordinance committee review?
Yeah, I will make the motion that this order number 23005 be tabled until such time as ordinance committee and staff are able to review the legislative intent of zoning as well as other matters related to this. How's that sound?
Second?
Any discussion? Or no discussion?
No, it's not on the
Okay.
table.
So all those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. All right, thank you, everybody, for coming and talking tonight. All right, next up is order number 23-006, 7 PM public hearing and action on the new request for a food handler's license and liquor license from El Rodeo Scarborough LLC. El Rodeo located at 623 US Route 1. Jody, would you like to introduce this?
Sure. This is a new application for El Rodeo Scarborough LLC, and they are going to be located in the what used to be last in the past two, I believe. And the applications are in order, and we recommend approval.
Great. Is there anybody in the public who would like to comment on this item? Or anybody online? I'm seeing nobody, so I'm closing the public hearing. Can I get a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? No? All those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. So there is no old business, so now moving on to new business. Order number 23-007, first reading and schedule a public hearing on the request to amend chapter 311, the schedule of fees relating to moorings. This was brought to us by the Coastal Waters and Harbor Committee, and I think Councilor Hamel, you're going to set it up.
Thank you. I'm going to introduce Darren Granata, who is instrumental in helping us to revise all of the coastal waters ordinances. When we did that, we knew we had to come back on fees. So we deliberated on that in the Coastal Waters Committee last week, and Darren did all of the legwork, did the analysis of rates in other towns and that sort of thing. So I'm not going to steal his thunder, but I let him introduce this and thank him for his good work on that and that of the committee. Thank you.
How are you? Darren Granata. I live on Old Blue Point Road, and I'm a member of the Coastal Waters and Harbor Committee. The committee looked at this over the last few years and looked at the fee structure that has been in for the towns, since most of it hasn't been looked at since 2006. And a lot of it was revised in 2017. And what we did was we took a snapshot from Kittery to Eastport of every single harbor in the state, and we looked at what they had, commercial moorings, recreational moorings, pier uses, boat launches. We compiled all that data onto a spreadsheet, and we basically looked at that and came up to the numbers that we drafted and proposed. The numbers that are there now, there's not a lot of revenue there for infrastructure replacement, working waterfront. We know that I've seen that harbor in the last 25 years just blow up. It's at the point now where we're going to have to put some money into infrastructure. There's grant money available, but we also have to have matches, and we have other stuff that's going on. So the committee sat down, we looked at all the fee structures, we hashed out a bunch of numbers based on what we looked at the entire state, and we kind of did an average of where we need to be based on what our needs are. We added a few fees because there's been some fees that people have come in, used piers, used hoist, used fresh water, haven't paid a nickel. Other harbors in the state are charging them a fee for that one-time tuna outload or one-time use. We also, there's some verbiage in the ordinance that we rewrote for emergency purpose. So that covers some people that get forced in there that on an emergency that wouldn't have to pay. We looked at a lot of the fiscal impact for the boat ramps, the water access, the hoist, the dock systems. We had an engineering study done in the last 2 or 3 months now. The engineering study came back, and we need some substantial structural items replaced and fixed on both the pedestrian walkway and down the road on the actual pier itself. So we're trying to look forward at 3, 5, 7, 10 years to make sure that we have the revenue accounts and the revenue stream to make those happen without a lot of impact on the taxpayer. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Don or anyone on this item?
So just to help educate me, one of the fees is a one-time pier use fee resident, it's $100. When would that be triggered? Is that if I?
Yeah. Might be a question for Darren.
Darren, come back.
Yeah. Darren. Sorry, Darren.
I'm trying, so if I'm a one-time pier use fee resident, the $100 fee, can you walk me through, and maybe you did it already?
Sure.
When does that kick in? How do I get charged $25?
So let's say you commercially fish, you turn tuna fish, you go out, you land a tuna, you come in, we put a ice truck on the pier, it's there for, an hour, you tie up for 2 or 3 hours, you put fuel on, you take water. That's the kind of we're looking at. Or let's say you own a sailboat and you have to stand your mast up and you use the pier for 2 or 3 hours that day. You might use the hoist, so that would be the incidental use.
Thank you.
Any other questions before he sits back down? No? All right. Is there anybody from the public who would like to comment on this?
Hello, my name is Nathan Orff. I'm the member of the Shellfish Commission, and I had originally come to talk about that matter, but I'm also a commercial lobsterman and tuna fisherman out of Pine Point. And I just wanted to reiterate to you guys that, the condition of the pier is deteriorating in a lot of ways, and everybody knows the pedestrian walkway is shut down. And honestly, it's pretty awesome going down there and seeing all the people walking out that pier, and the kids are down fishing crab pots and talking to the lobstermen. I take the time out of my day to stop and talk to people and, educate them a little bit, and everybody loves it. But I think it's important, it should be emphasized that if the increases of this are, really happening to the fees that drastically, it should be taken into consideration that some real maintenance and, concern over the pier should take place. But that's about all I have on this. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
All right, any discussion? Counselor Katarina?
Yeah, I, having talked with Counselor Hamel and being involved in, well, not myself personally, but my family with fishing and whatever. I think this makes sense. I think there's been a lot of good work done to look at what's going on in other parts of the state and make sure that we are where we should be and that we're charging a fair fee for the use of these structures and the launch, whatever is going on down there, and which is a lot some days. So I support this wholeheartedly, and I would encourage all of my fellow counselors to support this.
Great. Any other comments?
I was just gonna say, I support it as well. I think it's time to update a lot of our fees. I'm really interested to see the process that went behind this, because I think other departments can probably update their fees as well. So I think this is a great start.
Any other comments? No? All right, all those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Next is order number 23-008, act on the request from the Shellfish Commission to approve the allocations of, I can't say this word, shellfish licenses for 2023. Counselor Hamel, would you like to set this up?
Thanks very much. Yeah, we've been working on this. I'm the liaison to Coastal Waters, but also to the Shellfish Commission. And this is an annual process we go through in terms of trying to establish the license numbers for shellfish harvesting, or otherwise known as clamming. So we're pleased to have Nate Orff as chair of the the Shellfish Commission, and Noah Nygren is here as well, who's worked really extensively on our entire effort around surveys and other conservation work. You may recall last year, there were a lot of questions about a status quo position that we took on licenses. There was a lot of pressure to reduce the number of licenses. So I'm pleased to report we've made very good progress with the survey activity on the one hand. On the other hand, there's still a lot of work to be done. This is a fairly precise process that requires that you actually take, you use maps of areas, and you actually take sightings, GPS sightings of every place you sample. So the survey data is an essential activity. We basically tripled the number of surveys that we did compared to prior years. We surveyed areas including Battleground, Demi's Bar, Jones Creek, Turner's Bar, and Seabee's Landing. And so this data, combined with landings information, will enable the state, the Department of Marine Resources, to obtain solid baseline data to evaluate the health and productivity of clamming and related harvesting and conservation work. Surveyors included, not only Noah Nygren, but also Stephen Baudouin, Graham Chase, Elijah Holbrook, Mike Lemlin, Terry Toomey, Greg Turner, and Robert Willett. So despite our progress, we need to refocus our efforts in the coming year to plan better, to execute better. And we're actually getting additional resources from the state. The state made a recent announcement to appoint someone to head up the Nearshore Marine Resources Program, a young woman named Meredith White and Ari Leach, who joined us actually at our last Shellfish Commission meeting, and they were helpful in terms of the activity that took place at that meeting. So what we're here to do tonight is that we're requesting the council to approve the recommendation of the Scarborough Maine Shellfish Commission. They voted 5-2 at their Tuesday meeting last week, January 11th, to reduce the number of commercial residential licenses from 31 to 30 and commercial non-residential licenses in kind according to a 10% rule. We're going to set the non-residential commercial licenses at 10% of whatever the resident commercial licenses are. The committee's justification, and this is all in a memo that Tony sent to the DMR and is pending. The committee's justification was based on analysis, review, and discussion of the data from the shellfish surveys completed between May and August of 2022, and also considering other factors, including the fact that approximately 10% of the surveys didn't report any spat at all. Spat are kind of like the seeds that end up growing into clams that are big enough to harvest. The reductions required by this recommendation will be implemented in the normal course of business as licenses become available. It will not include revocations from current license holders. So this is our proposal to the DMR. It's a two-step process. So we're asking for the council's approval to move this recommendation forward, and then we'll hear from the DMR and we'll come back again before the lottery in April. So that's why we're here. And I don't know if there's anything that Nate or Noah would like to add, but this is I mean, it's a really interesting area. It's an area I think that would encourage other people to look at. There are other conservation activities and things like that might be available for people to do in terms of community service. So getting more people involved with the resource, I think, will just help us overall manage the health and yield of the resource.
Great. Any questions for Councilor Hamel? Is there anybody from the public who'd like to comment on this? Online? All right, seeing none. All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion?
I was going to mention one thing.
Yep.
I've learned more than I ever conceived of about this world. I was just like many things in life, there's a lot more to it than you realize. It seems pretty simple, but it's been a great learning experience for me and I've really enjoyed working with the commission on it. So thank you.
Quick. So it was voted 5-2.
Yep.
What was the idea behind the two dissenting votes? What was the concerns?
So Nate was one of the no votes. So maybe Nate, you could help us with the rationale on that. You can do a better job of it than I can. Sorry to put you on the spot.
Yeah, so I've learned a lot about this over the past few years, and right now I'm actually writing a master's thesis on shellfish management in Maine. And like the whole control that the Shellfish Commissions municipalities have over shellfish programs across the state is really cool. And I appreciate you guys, taking the time to actually listen to the clam diggers, I guess, and, talk about these issues. But I guess the rationale behind it is, there's obviously a finite resource, and I've kind of hemmed and hawed about it personally. I have a student license currently, so my license expires in April. And I guess, although selfishly I would, enjoy getting a resident adult license, I can acknowledge that the shellfish stocks currently, soft shells are facing sort of a crisis. Most of the conservation efforts done by nonprofits and environmental groups are now focusing on quahog, hard shell clams, because soft shell landings have been, trending downwards. So, there's so many factors, including inactive licenses that are still being issued, that, the pressure on the resource can really fluctuate depending on the year. So I think it's a pretty conservative, good bet to reduce the license numbers as we're able to, as licenses come back in that aren't renewed, just to give a better grasp on the whole management of the resource, because it is so important to so many commercial people and also the, recreational harvesters that are issued hundreds of licenses every year. But, yeah, I think it's a reasonable request, and DMR also is in agreements with it. And, they used landings data, which won't be available until the end of February next year, or this year, I guess. So, anecdotal evidence from harvesters and then the survey data, which we're obviously trying to create a better survey program to get better data for this. So, well, thank you.
Thank you. All right, any other comments? No? All those in favor? It's unanimous. All right, next up is order number 23-009, act on the request to appoint Doug Howard, Public Works Director, to replace Town Manager on the EcoMaine Board.
Yes, with the retirement of Mike Shaw, I was pleased to step into his role on the EcoMaine Board. A number of counselors have had the pleasure of serving on that board. Hugely important responsibility. The majority of that facility is located in Scarborough. We are an owner-member community, and it's really important that we have ongoing, consistent representation on that board. I really think it's important that Doug Howard, our Public Works Director, who manages our solid waste program, be part of that conversation, and therefore recommending that he take my place at this point. I'll continue to certainly be involved, again, for all the aforementioned matters.
Great. Any questions for Tom? All right, can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? No? All those in favor? It's unanimous.
Thank you.
All right, next is order number 23-010. Act on the request to appoint Michael Wood to the Airport Noise Committee as recommended by the Appointments Negotiations Committee. Karen, would you like to set this one up?
Sure, this actually isn't actually a town committee. I would call it maybe like a county committee, but it's a committee created and it's to deal with the airport noise. And so we had a couple applications, so it was kind of kicked down to the appointments committee, which seemed to make sense to review the applications. So we did, and one of the applications that we are recommending to move forward would be Michael Wood. And I'm not sure, I would imagine most people here on the council are familiar with Mr. Wood. Not only was he a former town councilor, but he was also an air traffic controller for over 30 years between Portland and Boston. So we felt like it was an appropriate appointment.
Great. Any questions for Karen? No? Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? Counselor Katarina?
Yeah, I think, given Mike's background as an air traffic controller, this makes perfect sense. Thank you, Mike, for stepping up to do this.
I was just going to say, I suspect there's a noise canceling glass in those traffic control. Yeah, he's obviously very qualified.
All right. Any other discussion? No. All right, all those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Next is non-action items. We have no non-action items today. Item 10, standing and special committee reports and liaison reports. Counselor McGee.
Sure, just two quick updates. Library just received a $10,000 grant to retrofit their lighting for more eco-friendly options, and that was granted by Norway Savings Bank. So big shout out and thank you to community partner for helping with that effort. And then secondly, just a quick update on transportation. Sat in on their meeting yesterday, and they're working through some of their goal setting and priorities. And I'm impressed with the experience that's on that committee and their knowledge base. And I think we should expect hopefully some pretty good things this year from that committee. That's it.
Great. Counselor Scyther.
Sustainability met this morning. They also are working on their goals for 2023, primarily focusing on which ordinances they would like to make recommendations for some potential changes or updates to for the council, which aligned well with our goals discussion from Saturday. So I was pleased that that was the focus of their discussion today. They did touch briefly, Jamie, obviously our sustainability coordinator, heads up both Conservation Commission and sustainability. There's a lot of overlap for her there. And I just wanted to update the council that it's looking as though Green Day, which they were hoping to kind of have to model after South Portland's Electrify South Portland Day, is probably a big lift for between now and April. And so they're still focused on bringing forward some educational pieces. But maybe like the townwide day that they were hoping for is an action for the future. And I hope I didn't overstep, but I suggested that if they were going to look for some budgetary assistance, that maybe find its way into a finance discussion.
Counselor Shu?
Yeah, so the Conservation Commission was also discussing the Green Day. I wasn't sure what they had called it yet. I wasn't sure if it was Sustainable Day or Green Day. So I know there's some activity in that. The other thing that I thought was cool coming on the Conservation Commission that they were talking about was No Mow May, which I thought was caught on where it's just basically a thing where you just don't mow your lawn in May, which I don't mow my lawn in May anyways. So if I have a reason to do it, and I think Jean Marie could probably speak more as to about, you know, the benefits of not mowing your lawn when everything is coming to growth. That's the Conservation Commission. In regards to, I believe in the appointments and negotiations committees, I have some appointments for the first reading, which I'll do right now. At our last appointments meeting, we did vote on some positions, and first was the Community Services and Advisory Board. We had 3 positions available, and we voted for the first reading here today to move forward the following recommendations. So for the Community Services and Rec Advisory Board, we are recommending to appoint Alexander Marshall as a full voting member with a term to expire in 2025. We are proposing to appoint William Partridge as the first alternate with a position to expire in 2023. And then a second alternate is Amanda Doherty with a position to expire in 2024. And then on the Long Range Planning Committee, we are recommending to appoint Ken Johnson as a full voting member with a term to expire in 2025. And that's it.
Great. Any other committee updates? No? So I have a couple of things. So we did have our goals workshop on Saturday this past week, and it was a great discussion. We came out of there with essentially, I think, 17 goals, 17 or 18. So I did share those with you guys again for one final review. Again, there were some that I felt like rose to the top in terms of priorities, but I want to make sure we have alignment in terms of what we see as those key priorities. And to me, everything we came up with, I think some of them are also things that are already underway that we want to continue to support. So I think just look at it through the lens and say, can we accomplish all of these? Do we think town staff can support all of these? Is there anything we may want to consider removing? But again, I think we have a really good set going forward. Just for the public, we tried to focus this year holistically to make sure we were looking at everything from conservation and sustainability to homelessness and housing choices, growth, traffic and transportation. So we really tried to make sure we were being as holistic as we could in our focus for next year and the goals we wanted to set. So hopefully we can get some further consensus and get these voted on at our February 1st meeting. We did have our GMO Tiger Team meeting right before this meeting today. Again, Nick and I took one of the goals that we talked about that wasn't really a goal, but like really trying to, not get buckled down in process and try and move things forward for the things that we're working on. And so he and I met after our goals meeting and tried to kind of put our heads together in terms of concepts we wanted to test with the council. We shared those today with Tom, Autumn, and Karen. They also shared some of their own thoughts as well. And really what we're hoping is to have options at our workshop that we're going to schedule on February 15th to start to share those ideas with the council and get some feedback. These aren't going to be the precise things we're going to do. It's more we want to test some ideas and see where there's appetite to potentially move forward. So we're not coming forward with an official proposal. Some of the things I think Nick and I talked about, we're not even sure if we support them. We just thought we need to get something and get some conversation going. And so we want to do that on the 15th. And we'll also hopefully use that time to, help summarize some of the feedback that we received from the committees, the town staff, as well as the development community that we engaged. Last week, we did have a forum led by Karen Martin, where we pulled in some developers from the community to get their feedback on the GMO. That should be posted publicly for people to watch on the town's
I
website.
think as soon as tomorrow, it will be available. Yep.
Yeah, and that was a miss on my part to not make sure that we tried to broadcast it live or post it publicly, but we do have the meeting available for people to watch if they're interested to hear from the developer's lens what their thoughts are around the GMO and how we can make improvements. Also, I believe, and I just need to confirm with the communications committee chair that part of our process would be to also share some of those concepts potentially through a Counselor Corner Live in February. So hopefully that will be a topic for consideration for the committee to recommend that we can also use that forum to kind of do a quick pulse with the community on some of the concepts we want to put out there. Then just as a reminder, tomorrow night, we have a joint executive session with the school board that starts they're doing their regular meeting first. And so they had suggested that we come around 7:15. So that way, unless you want to get there earlier to sit through their meeting and hear what's going on there. You should be getting some material likely tonight. That's just kind of a quick pre-read meant to giving some background to those that haven't been as close to things. I know Counselor Scyther and I have been sitting on the school building committee, but there will be things that will be shared in that executive session tomorrow to bring everybody on the council up to speed on site selection.
Refreshments might help with the early read there.
Yeah. All right. And then last but not least, just as a reminder, Todd Souza did send us all the Parks and Facilities Master Plan to try and take a look at. We do have a workshop scheduled or planned for February 1st for a review of that, as well as getting a quick community center update. So again, Todd asked for some pretty quick feedback. So if you guys have time, please make sure to give him that feedback. That's all I have. Is there anything else anybody wants to share? All right, Councilor Gucci.
So I missed long range planning update. They are actually starting a pretty big undertaking to review the commercial design standards for commercial buildings, which is a pretty big undertaking. And they're starting to talk about some kind of like bus tour to review locations that maybe have good examples and others that have bad examples. And it's an ambitious project, but it's really important because, you know, that probably maybe more than anything else helps define what, you know, your new developments and redevelopments look like. So.
Great, thank you. All right, next is item number 11, council member comments. Are there any comments? No? Councilor Gucci?
I have one. So Liam, I don't know if you can bring this up. I said a couple of meetings ago that I was gonna, you know, I accepted a challenge from Councilor Hamel to try to help us improve our fiscal literacy, I think is how he referred to it. So I'm gonna try to, from time to time, pick a topic and go over it briefly, not in depth. This is very high level. Thought it was interesting. If you look at 17 years of budgets that we've approved, the total is about $1.5 billion. About 168 million has been for capital projects. About 6 or 7 million has been what we actually set aside in a particular year's budget for capital. And then not even 1 million yet for capital reserves. So if you do the math there, you get with about 1.3 million was used for operations. And then I just tried to show that this is how much was spent paying back principal. It's about $96 million, about 7.3% of your overall operating budget. Interest payments about 73.5 million. It's 5.5% of your overall budget. And then the net capital appropriation and money that we put away for future capital projects, you know, is less than 1% right now. But overall, for the history, it's about 13.5% of our operating budget has been spent on capital. This year and last year, it's actually been a little bit more than that, 14 to 14.5%. And we actually have a new target this year that I think we'll adopt as one of our goals. There's currently in being contemplated, is to try to hold steady with that. And I know we're going to be having some headwinds with inflation and whatnot, but I really think that when I look at that $73 million that's been spent on interest over the past 17 years, that's an opportunity, right? Because that is, you're not doing anything with that. You're paying somebody else. And that's if you can take a chunk of it and start spending it for other capital projects. And we are trending that way. We are starting to put more capital away. I just don't want to see a shift back to funding everything through debt. And I'm not advocating, but this is a topic that I think everybody's been interested in capital. So this is my attempt for the day.
This, I
Good job.
applaud your effort here, and it's a great tool. Just by you running through it now gives us, some handles that we could use potentially for decision making. So this is awesome. It's a great start. Thank you.
Thanks, Don.
So I know the communications committee at one point was talking about like doing some videos and blurbs on Facebook. So maybe this could be, finance corner with Counselor Cucci and just, you could.
I love
share your
it.
updates.
Expect
Yeah.
to see that on a, I love it.
Yeah.
Expect to see that on an upcoming agenda.
All right, any other comments? No? All right. Can I get a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, it's unanimous. Thank you, everyone.